I have a few paranormal events that happened all throughout my life. Most of them are pretty tame, but there is one that got to me and still sticks with me today. About 4 years ago, I was ending my freshman year at college. I had lived in the dorms with a kick-ass roommate and pretty much had a great experience altogether. Towards the end of my last semester, something seemed different in my hall of the dorms. We were all still our lively selves, but just walking into the dorms would give you this massive feeling of dread. We all wrote it off as the stress of finals approaching, but it just felt off. Well, one night after studying, I decided to hit the shower so I can just wake up and make my way to class in a few hours. Before I keep going, I should go ahead and set the layout of our hall and the bathroom. Our hall was one of many halls on a single floor. Each hall had 4 rooms that accommodated 2 people each, or a single room for the RAs. The entrance to the halls were massive steel doors with a small window located at one end, and across from it was the bathroom. It seriously felt like a prison block rather than a living quarter for college students. As for the bathroom itself, when you walked in, you were immediately met with 2 sets of sinks, 2 sinks aside, on your left and right, with massive mirrors facing each other and creating that infinite loop of mirrors. Then past that, you had your 2 urinals and a toilet stall on your left, and 2 showers on your right. When facing the left set of sinks, you can clearly see into the showers from the mirror, if the door is open. And in the right set of sinks, you can see the reflection of the shower. The door of the bathroom was identical to the entrance to the hall, a massive steel frame with a small window that didn't allow for much of a view, with good reason. The door was propped open with a giant wooden wedge that couldn't be moved unless you were really trying to close that door. So back to the story. I'm all alone in the bathroom gearing up to go shower. I throw my change of clothes on the right side sink so that way I can reach around the stall and grab them. Once I set my stuff down, I happen to look up into the mirror and I can see in the distance something almost shimmering inside the shower stall. As I look at it, I notice that it slowly gets closer, like it's jumping from the furthermost layer to the next layer closer. I'm kind of unsettled, but I don't think much of it other than me coming down off of a massive Red Bull, Adderall, and caffeine kick. But it starts transitioning faster. As it gets closer, I can start making out details, but nothing vivid or striking. It's just a dark mass that looks like it's covered in hair. At this point, I'm freaking out hardcore since this thing is getting closer in the mirror, and I'm pretty much frozen to this one spot. As it gets to the 4th layer, I get the closest look at this thing I'll ever get, and I regret every minute of it. It wasn't hair, but some kind of long flowing veil. You could see through it partially, but from the torso down, it was just solid black. And the face, I can't describe it. It was clearly human, but at the same time, it was so far removed. There were eyes. They were black, but definitely glowing somehow. I only saw this for maybe a second at the most, but it's burned into my mind forever. Then the lights cut out and I hear the door slam. It's pitch black in the bathroom, so I can't see this thing anymore. I go to open the door, but it won't budge, and then this intense smell of blood hits me out of nowhere, and that's all I remember. I woke up later in the hospital from what my RA claims he was on his way to go use the bathroom sometime after this happened, where he found me in the shower stall with my shirt covered in blood from a massive nosebleed. He tried asking me what happened, and according to him, all I could respond with was, "It saw me," and I start freaking out. So he calls an ambulance and they get me to the hospital. All the while I'm apparently freaking out, so they sedate me to get me to calm down. I'm coming to around the time my parents show up, worried sick of course. I asked them what happened, and according to the doctors, they believe I had a seizure. However, they ran CAT scans soon after I was cooperative enough to do so, and found no sign of any seizure occurring. Not to mention epilepsy doesn't run in my family at all, and having taken Adderall countless times in the past, and since then, I've never had a similar side effect, neither hallucinations or potential seizures. To this day, I still can't bring myself to look into a mirror for more than a minute, and just being stuck in a room with one for an extended period will just cause me to break down. I've been to therapy going on 3 years because of this, and I've talked to countless religious leaders who, besides giving me the general, "well, you should turn to God in times like these" talks, don't recognize that kind of pattern as anything demonic or evil. And the strangest thing is that before that incident, there were no actual claims of activity in those dorms, and since I left, there hasn't been any either. It was just that one isolated incident. I'll share mine. It didn't actually happen to me, but it happened to my mom when she was a teenager. My mom now is in her mid-60s. She's not an overly religious woman. She doesn't read the Bible regularly, rarely goes to church, but she prays every night because that is what gives her comfort. I'll have to side note this with I watched normal horror movies with her every so often. Nothing too crazy or gory, but spooky if you will sort of stuff. Well, I asked her if she wanted to watch The Exorcist, and she flat out 100% refused. She said there is absolutely absolutely no way she will ever watch anything related to possession or exorcisms. Well, this was curious, so the movie Constantine comes out and I show her the trailer asking her if she wants to watch it. She sees the girl near the beginning climbing the ceiling and just refuses again. I should also note, my mother will refuse and kick you out of her house if you even think about bringing a Ouija board into the house. She'll yell, scream, and cuss until you drop the subject, and that's that. This is important. All right, so that little backstory is out of the way. I ended up asking her why exactly she refuses to watch those sort of movies. Well, she tells me when she was a teenager at a sleepover at a friend's house, they were up playing games, the parents watching TV, her friends and herself are on the floor playing a board game, a game my mom has never played before. Well, come to find out it's a Ouija board, and she doesn't know what it does. Well, they start playing, asking a bunch of questions. They end up finding out there's a spirit in the house, so they ask it to show itself. Nothing happens. They demand it to show itself. This was her first indication something wasn't right, because the lights all around the house, every single room went out immediately, including the TV, and then snapped right back on. Spooky, huh? Nah, just a fluke. They ask the next question. Who are you? The piece moves around the board in big circles with their hands on it and stops at the letter D. Moves to the letter E, then to the letter V, I-L. Wow, someone must be messing with it. This can't be real. So they ask, if you are the devil, then show yourself. Nothing happens for a while, and then suddenly the TV goes out. Well, in the reflection in the TV sitting in the living room next to them, my mom and her friends, even her parents, could make out the shape of something terrifying just sitting there next to them. The house got extremely cold. Suddenly, loud noises could be heard in the kitchen, stuff flying off the top of the refrigerator, and cupboards opening and closing. They immediately stop the game, close it up, and throw it in the trash, never to play one again. Later that night, my mom is sound asleep and is awoken by something loud and clanging on the roof. She listens intently and she can hear what sounds like chains and dogs up on the roof. Well, that's not possible. It must be outside somewhere. She wakes up the next morning and goes and talks to her friends, parents, asks them if any of their neighbors have any dogs. They tell her no. And they tell her they also heard the dogs and chains up on the roof last night. So that's the story of why my mom refuses to watch anything that involves exorcisms. She truly believes that the devil was there with them that night, sitting next to them. And the messed up thing is, every time she tells me that story, I get this cold shiver down my spine that there is no way she would be making this up. When I was young, I'd say 8, 11-ish, my sister, whom is 7 years older, would babysit me when my parents were out. At the time, she smoked a lot, and my parents made her smoke outside, of course, so I'd follow her outside into the carport, which faced the street, and play around, annoy her and such. One day, my sister notices a car at the end of the driveway, just sitting in the road. It's a white SUV, I believe a mid-90s Bravado, not sure, with a bike rack on top. It has the most tinted windows I have ever seen. You could not see inside from the side. It sat there until she went inside, then would drive to the end of the road and sit at the church parking lot and wait until she'd come out again for another smoke, and it would repeat this. Odd, but my sister's a brave lady and just kind of ignored it. That is, until the next day while my parents were out again and it showed up again. It would sit at the end of the driveway and just watch. I don't know what the driver was doing, but he was watching my sister. If I didn't go out, I'd watch from the front window, and it would just sit there and watch my sister. She told my father, who was a sheriff deputy at the time, and he called the cops, made a complaint. They showed up, looked around, but the SUV was nowhere to be seen. Months went by, and nothing. Then one day, a good 9 months after this had all started, and 4-ish since the last sighting, it was back. It became a regular occurrence. Another day, my sister was outside doing her nasty habit, and sure enough, here it comes. This time we were alone as usual, and she decides she's had enough. She tells me to stay in the carport, and she's going to go confront them. She starts walking toward the SUV, and halfway down the driveway, she would later remark to us, I felt utter terror, like I knew if I went any further, I was dead. I was paralyzed by pure fear. She turned around and went inside. Finally, the family car was in the shop for some kind of issue, so we were all stuck home for a night and had to get delivery, etc. While my parents are home, my sister goes outside to smoke. I go outside with her, and eventually the SUV shows up. She tells me to run inside and tell my father, and I do. My dad promptly gets his gun and starts briskly walking down the driveway with it in hand in the direction of the SUV, but not leveled towards it. The SUV floored it down the road and peeled out onto the nearby large highway. My dad, being a cop, noted the year and model and distinguishing features. The scariest thing? The license plate had been covered in duct tape. We never saw it again, and my sister just kind of shrugs it off now. These stories still stick with me. I grew up in a house on Long Island in the town of Brentwood. It was a quiet town for its location. My dad worked as a taxi driver at the time, which meant he would usually end up coming home early in the morning, and I would greet him. So it's Saturday, I'm watching cartoons, and my dad comes in and I run to say hello. My mom hears us from the bedroom and says, "Hello, honey, don't go in the pool, it's not ready yet." Me and my dad think, well, that's weird. It's 6 a.m., we weren't going to go in the pool, but just brush it off, and he goes on to tell me his usual stories of the crazies he picked up throughout the night. We then realized it was Saturday, and my mom was at work, and it was only me and him in the house. The voice sounded just like my mother. Fast forward a couple of weeks, we had just moved into the house, and my new neighbors come over to welcome us to town. It was the two mothers, two sons, one my age, one a little older in 10th grade, two little girls, one blonde-haired girl and a shy brunette that didn't talk. We get to playing some soccer. However, the little brunette girl is nowhere to be found. The curious little kid I was, I ran around the property and I find her playing in the woods, a dangerous area for little nooblets to be exploring. She asks me to come play tag, but I decline, wanting to get everyone in on the game. The reactions of everyone as I asked for them to join us was puzzling, along with the response from the mom, "We only have one daughter." Turns out a small brown-haired girl drowned in the pool 10 years ago. The mother soon passed from a heart attack. The following 5 to 6 years was terrifying for everyone. I have a huge amount of stories from this house. Just message me if you want to hear more. All right, I'll share another one. So I've been living in this house for a little while now, pretty spooky. Things have happened, but nothing as bad as when I first moved in and met the neighbors. I'm coming back from school one day, and if I recall correctly, I was in the 7th grade, and my parents and brother were all out. So I go in, fix myself up some Dunkaroos and pizza rolls, and watch some TV. Love Dunkaroos so much. I get bored, so I go outside and play some basketball by myself, and not soon after, I hear a door slam. The yard was enormous, but it was a small house with big windows and white transparent curtains. I just presumed the sound was my brother getting back, so I look through the pale curtains and I can make out a figure walking through the house. However, I could not guess who it was. As I get to the driveway, you have to wrap around the side to get in the house, I noticed that there were no cars parked, which meant no one was home. Maybe my brother got a ride back? But where would he leave his Altima? Surely he never let it leave his side. Approaching the front door, I realized it was locked. I had left it open specifically so I could get back in. As I wriggle the doorknob, I hear hurried footsteps head to the door, slowly turning into a sprint, in which they stop right at welcome rug on the inside. I just stand there petrified until my brother pulls up. I tell him what happens. He gets his iron bat from practice, and we make our way into the house. Not a single freaking thing in the entire house. Nothing was disturbed and had been left the same exact way I left it. However, that's not the most disturbing part. My brother didn't use his key to get in, which meant the door was open all the along.